So, unless you've been living under a rock for the past few months, you must have heard about the game that's recently taken over the internet and brought some of the biggest, most unexpected YouTube collaborations we're likely to ever see.
Stop!
Among Us has been nothing short of a pop culture sensation, and though I've only played a few games myself, I've still been mostly unable to avoid the onslaught of content the game has influenced or downright created. And as a result, I've been sucked into the fold as well, leading to a buildup of pressure that can only be relieved through my own Among Us content. So, to expedite this process, I've decided to make an Among Us video myself, but rather than making a skit or sharing one of my playthroughs, as many other creators have done, I've instead chosen something hopefully a bit more unique and interesting. Today, I'm creating an Among Us team, made of people I'd most like to see interact for the most compelling and entertaining game possible. But I'm not drafting just anyone. No, I'm looking at movie characters and picking 10 for the best game of Among Us.
Hi.
Before I start though, let me lay out a few restrictions to narrow my options. Firstly, I'm only picking humans. No animals, no ghosts or ghouls, no zombies, no diseases, no inanimate objects or intangible concepts, only humans. Secondly, I'm not picking anyone with powers. I don't care if they're supernatural or organic or if you got it from a radioactive tub of waste. If it's past my arbitrary cutoff of what a human can or should be able to do, I'm not considering it. And finally, I'm not including any superheroes. So if you're one of those superheroes that doesn't have any powers, then you're still out. Batman, Iron Man, I'm looking at you. And for the game itself, I'm thinking of it a bit more realistically than how Among Us actually is. The characters will have to actually kill each other. They won't be able to just press a button and end someone's life. They'll have to chase or trap them first. This also means that some characters may be able to defend themselves, so I'm taking that into consideration as well. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get started.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
We are in very serious trouble.
Look, Jeffrey Dahmer was eating the shit out of niggas' heads.
He's the one.
So there are two main categories that I'm placing each character into: imposters and crewmates. I'm going to identify 5 characters for each category and explain how and to what degree they satisfy the conditions for either imposters or crewmates. I'll look at imposters first. People love to talk about the flashiest parts of imposters, the kills.
Oh god.
And understandably so. If you can't kill anyone, how do you expect to succeed? Being capable of killing is a prerequisite as an imposter, unless of course you have a partner who will carry that burden for you. If you opt against being the killer, you have to work well to keep the target off of your partner and yourself as well. You need to be manipulative and unexpected. You need to be able to blend in with the crewmates. Obviously though, a great way to be imposter is to be able to kill swiftly and undetected, without the blame being placed on you. So, of course, some of these characters possess nearly unparalleled skills in evasion, manipulation, and killing. Which brings me to my first choice. You're gonna love this one. With my first pick, I'm drafting Jigsaw from the Saw series, one of the most notorious killers in horror history. And yes, he is a killer. I don't care what he says. Jigsaw has a mind for manipulation and planning. Not only can he convince others that he's not the killer, he can convince himself as well. He'll put a gun to your face, pull the trigger, and say that you did it to yourself. And he'll believe it too. Even when all the evidence points directly to him, he'll still weasel his way out, either managing to trick you into killing yourself, or convince everyone else that what he did isn't technically killing. Now, I know what you're thinking. He's been caught. And yes, he has been caught, but only because he chose to be. He brought the cops to his door because he knew he'd escape. He knew exactly how to manipulate the other characters to not only put themselves in a worse position, but bolster himself to an even better one. Though he'd likely get too caught up in his own ideology at points, as long as he's aware of his competition, Jigsaw would be a great imposter. With my next pick, I'm taking Anton Shier from No Country for Old Men. Anton has immense skill as a killer. He doesn't need a degree in civil engineering or a carefully thought out plan to kill you. He'll use whatever weapon he has available. I mean, he'll even use the handcuffs that are supposedly still restraining him. He doesn't care. Anton often seems reckless and negligent, and those qualities are generally bad in imposters, but despite his often outrageous and daring actions, he somehow hasn't been caught. Despite having a grand reputation as a killer, nobody has been able to apprehend this elusive assassin, making him a fitting choice for imposter. He can also sneak around well, hiding in the shadows, observing the environment, and pounce only once he's found an opportunity. He has an imposing, almost impenetrable demeanor. When he has prepared himself for something, he does it, regardless of the opposition or probability of success. As a one-track mind, he'll probably have a high degree of variance, occasionally having an awful playthrough, but at his best, he'll likely have some preposterous kills, somehow blowing off someone's head in broad daylight without anyone suspecting him. Next, I'm taking Jack from the house that Jack built. As another masterful, direct, extremely personal killer, Jack shares many similarities with Anton. He's exceptionally skilled and capable of killing in a variety of ways. He's amazing at getting away with it too. Sure, he has a weakness, but it's not easy for others to exploit if they don't initially know about it. Jack has an extreme lack of empathy and will kill on a whim, even after someone has begged and pleaded for their life. He also possesses a unique level of charm, and against the right crewmates, will slide out of suspicion with his ingenuity and performance. He has a way of evading capture, always staying one step ahead. However, he relishes killing, and in certain situations, he may admire his own work too much and get caught doing so. Like Jigsaw, but to a lesser degree, he can also be overly elaborate and spend far too long focusing on a single victim. So, if he takes his role seriously, he stands a great chance, even against many of the upcoming crewmates I'll soon outline. But he may also find himself in bad situations simply due to his own arrogance, making for a generally great imposter that may occasionally perform poorly. Now, I'm taking Amy from Gone Girl. She may not be the most skillful killer in cinema, but man, can she craft a narrative. She thinks 20 steps ahead and can get herself out of sticky situations. She somehow managed to pin her own husband for her murder without dying.
He doesn't get to win.
She thought of nearly every contingency, and even though her husband eventually figured out what she did, he couldn't do much about it. In a game of Among Us, her ability to manipulate the narrative and deceive people could result in unparalleled levels of success. However, she may get overly involved in her own deception and build on unsustainable stories. Her plans are not foolproof either. She gives off a somewhat fake persona to the keen-eyed viewer. She doesn't show much empathy and likely wouldn't have much difficulty killing any potential crewmates, but her relative inexperience with the act itself may lead to some challenges. However, as I said, she has an uncanny ability to improvise and work through these situations, allowing her to be one of the most potentially fearsome imposters. With my final pick, I'm taking someone who, much like Amy, is less of a killer and more of a deceiver. Someone who appears completely normal, totally blending in with those around her, all while hiding her true nature. With that said, I'm choosing Red from Jordan Peele's Us. Lupita Nyong'o's Red was essentially an imposter for the whole movie, but seemed completely normal. Of course, she had the advantage of looking exactly like the person she impersonated, and the truth of her existence was far too outrageous for anyone to seriously consider, giving her the bliss of ignorance, a gift she won't be awarded in this game. And yes, she wasn't much of a killer either, having far worse performances in that department than the other characters I mentioned, but her ability to observe and learn about her environment and the people around her in order to seamlessly blend in far surpasses the others on this list and could allow her to make it to the end even over some of the crewmates I'll mention later, who, perhaps even due to their own skill in killing, may seem far more suspicious than her. So, with that said, my imposter lineup is Jigsaw from the Saw series, Anton Shier from No Country for Old Men, Jack from the house that Jack built, Amy from Gone Girl, and Red from Us. Now, onto the crewmates. The crewmates can win the game in two ways: vote out all the imposters, or complete the task before the imposters kill enough of the crewmates. Most of the time though, there simply isn't enough time to complete the task before too many crewmates have died, either because the crewmates were too lazy, or because the imposters were too aggressive. So, the best crewmates are the ones who can most quickly and accurately figure out the imposters. They're also able to keep suspicion off of themselves, and realize that even though they themselves know that they are a crewmate, the others aboard the ship do not. With that in mind, my first crewmate is none other than R.J. MacReady from 1982's The Thing. Unlike anyone else on this list, MacReady has already won a game of Among Us. He's already proven himself to be capable of finding, isolating, and disposing of imposters, and he did it without the expectation that he'd even be playing. Thrust into a chaotic situation, MacReady managed to outwit every move the imposter made and survive the entire ordeal. Now, admittedly, he did make a few mistakes in his initial playthrough, but he managed to overcome them, and considering he began the game with no idea of the rules, in this situation, he'd likely fare even better. If I'm being honest, MacReady wouldn't do many tasks. He'd focused almost entirely on capturing the imposter. He'd just come in clutch at the end with some crazy theory on who everyone is and propose a plan to test everyone. With his ability to quickly take control of chaotic and dangerous situations, MacReady would be able to simultaneously figure out the imposters and keep himself out of suspicion, the two most important abilities for crewmates. And I know many people don't like the 2011 version, but Kate would be a great choice here too. Next, I'm taking Ripley from Alien. In many ways, she serves a similar function to MacReady. They both took charge in chaotic situations involving extraterrestrial life forms. However, though Ripley doesn't have any experience dealing with imposters like MacReady, she still managed to survive against an arguably harder to kill enemy, outlasting all her crewmates. Ripley takes her job seriously and follows protocol. Unlike many crewmates, she wouldn't simply let the reactor go off and hope someone else did it instead. She works intelligently and patiently, and even when she finds herself in terrifying situations, she somehow works up the courage to overcome them. In a game of Among Us, Ripley would move methodically and try to come up with a plan to isolate the imposter, and if all else failed, she'd keep her distance well enough to outmaneuver any attacks said imposters would throw at her. She's basically the perfect crewmate. For my next choice, I'm taking Hannibal Lecter. Now look, this is pretty much cheating because Hannibal Lecter is only human by technicality. Essentially an imposter, a monster, a cannibal blending in with humans, Hannibal knows how imposters think. He'd understand how they act and would know how to uproot them from their hiding spots. His unparalleled knowledge of the human psyche, as well as his incredible animal-like observation skills, would allow him to find the holes in the other players' stories. He may even pull his trickery so well that he could convince them to reveal themselves. However, due to his level of competition, this may actually backfire and leave him the suspect. I don't see some of these characters falling for his psychological tactics as easily as many others he's faced in his films. Though, he's still Hannibal Lecter, and Among Us is built for a guy like him. He could be a crewmate or an imposter and have the same level of success either way. But as a crewmate, he'd have the intelligence and observational skills to not only pinpoint the imposters, but convince the crewmates as well. You have to pick Hannibal. Now, I'm taking Black Dynamite from, well, Black Dynamite. I'm just gonna keep it real. You're not gonna kill Black Dynamite, so if he's in the game, the only way you'll win is if you kill enough of everyone else. With his fighting ability, Black Dynamite can withstand any imposter. And no matter what he says, no matter how ridiculous the accusation or evidence may seem, he will somehow have the correct answer. It may feel like he's making stuff up and building nonsensical connections, but I promise you, he knows what he's doing, even when it doesn't seem like it. I'll admit though that, much like MacReady, Black Dynamite probably wouldn't do many tasks. He'd instead focus on finding the imposter and would likely do so with unmatched accuracy. If you haven't seen Black Dynamite, then this may sound a bit too unbelievable, but if so, I implore you to watch it. That's the only way to truly understand the power of Black Dynamite. For my final pick, I'm taking Detective Benoit Blanc from Knives Out. Everyone tries to be a detective when playing Among Us, so why not bring in a real one? Detective Blanc has a peculiar way of uncovering the truth. He may not have nearly as much style or charisma as Black Dynamite, but he has just as much skill in finding the truth through unconventional methods. He notices even the smallest details and finds ways to connect and rationalize them. In a game of Among Us, Blanc would be an observer, examining every other player's movements and words. Like MacReady and Black Dynamite, he'd probably focus far more on finding the imposter than on the tasks. This, however, could make him suspicious to the other players, so he'd have to do so carefully. Compared to the other crewmates, Blanc would also be fairly easy to kill, so he'd need to find ways to protect himself if he wants to make use of his detective skills. All in all though, Detective Benoit Blanc would be a great crewmate. Alright, so that's the last one. To recap, my crewmates are MacReady, Ripley, Hannibal Lecter, Black Dynamite, and Detective Blanc. My imposters are Jigsaw, Anton Shier, Jack, Amy, and Red. If this game were to occur, I have no idea what would happen. At least some of the imposters would have to be crewmates, and if they played multiple rounds, some of the crewmates would likely be imposters at some point as well. Who do you think would have the least drop off in their performance when placed in the opposite group? Who would have the biggest? Personally, I think Hannibal would easily suss out everyone as a crewmate and kill people better than most, if not all, of the other players as imposter. But if his psychological voodoo doesn't work, he's so sketchy that he might get voted out as a crewmate or as an imposter just for looking the way he does. Besides, in The Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal was an imposter for a brief period after tearing off and wearing someone else's face. His ingenuity combined with his unparalleled gall would have disastrous effects for any unsuspecting crewmates. Black Dynamite would be a great imposter as well, especially if he were a crewmate in a previous game, because that would make his preposterous stories more believable to the other players. He'd also not have too much difficulty taking out any of the imposters or crewmates I've named. He'd be truly terrifying. Now, before I end the video, I thought I'd bring up some characters who just missed the cut. People who I believe would make for, at the very least, extremely entertaining games of Among Us, whether that be because they are very skilled or inept. So, here are some honorable mentions. Pinbacker from Sunshine, Luke from Better Watch Out, Gordo from The Gift, Mick Taylor from Wolf Creek, Robert Graysmith from Zodiac, Lou Bloom from Nightcrawler, Leonard Shelby from Memento, Brendan from Brick, and Will Graham from Red Dragon. Comment any other movie characters you would want to see in a game of Among Us, and let me know if you want another video where I include powers and non-human characters as well. Until then, thanks for watching.